If we were in a different time, inside in a full congregation, willing to be able to take the time to have a full service, we would read a few verses, some selection of the book of Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, today. And I really encourage you to take a chance to look at the book if you have an English Tanakh at home, English Bible at home, or you can go online. A beautiful website is safaria.org that has a modern translation and obviously the Hebrew as well of many, many different books, including the entire Jewish Bible. And I'm going to repeat myself for a lot as I keep saying that a lot of our Jewish tradition that I, even myself as a rabbi, didn't always understand. Now I understand with a lot more wisdom. Ecclesiastes actually is a book of wisdom. This is Zman Simchatenu, a time of joy, of rejoicing. And I'll speak for myself. Until this year, it was easy to rejoice, always. But then why did our tradition call for us to read this book, Kohelet, that begins, Havel Havelim Amar Kohelet, Havel Havelim Hakol Havel. Often translated as fertility, utter futility, says Kohelet. But a better translation is fleeting. All is fleeting. The whole world, the whole universe is something that is fleeting. Why do we read this sobering book? Too much wind. Why do we read this sobering book on such a day of joy? But this year, when our joy is hard to come by, and I have to work and we have to work to make our joy, I think we now understand why we read Kohelet, is as a chance to understand how we can maybe rejoice even at this time of mixed emotions, uncertainty, as people always like to say, and I would say even anxiety. Many of us know the verses of chapter 3, where it says, a season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for being born, a time for dying, a time for planting and a time for uprooting the planted, a time for slaying and a time for healing, a time for tearing down and a time for building up, a time for weeping, a time for laughing, a time for wailing and a time from dancing, a time for throwing stones and a time for gathering those stones. And read me right now, most poignantly, a time for embracing and a time to refrain from embracing, a time for seeking and a time for losing, a time for keeping and a time for discussing. There's too much to ask, too much to talk about and think about during this brief service. But the one aspect that I want to focus on this morning is the Kohelet's description of a season for everything. It seems too simplistic if we take it literally. These feelings and actions opposites of each other, and they seem like they are linear. There is a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to be born and a time to die. But I think we can all know of instances where in families, a person was literally born while a loved one in the family was dying. We need to hug. We need to hug badly right now. And right now, we need to refrain often from our embracing out of love and safety for one another. These feelings, these experiences are not always opposite, and they're most certainly not linear. We are going to feel them at the exact same time. And that's what I'd like to suggest the way to read these verses. We are going to experience all of these emotions: anger, happiness, love, joy, loss, sorrow, pain, hugging and not hugging. And they're going to be mixed up sometime in the matter of hours or even moments. We've all been to funerals where people start to laugh when they think of a beautiful memory. And we've all been to weddings where the tears just seem to flow down. Moments of happiness with tears and moments of sadness with laughter. This is a season of joy, but it's also a season of remembrance and missing our loved ones. Reciting Yizkor today on a holiday is the embodiment of this idea that our emotions are not linear. We will cry on holidays and laugh at funerals. Kohelet tells us that life is fleeting. It is something that we need to hold on to, even with life's headaches. That's what the rest of the book is mostly about. But I really do encourage you to read it, because each and every word and metaphor will speak to us differently. And sometimes we need to just not worry too much what the future will bring. So I'll end with a very telling verse about how God created us. And it's helping me actually find some joy in this time of anxiety and uncertainty. Quoting the verse. He brings everything to pass, God that is, at its time. God also puts eternity into the mind of humankind, but without humans ever guessing that they have this eternity. From first to last, all things that God brings come to pass. I interpret this verse as being about our own human sense of time and infinity. We know that infinity exists, and yet we cannot really fathom it. We can't express it. It is irrational, as we say in mathematics. And we know that things good and bad will happen, but we cannot predict it. That can be seen as a source of great anxiety or as a gift. What will the winter bring? That's part of one of the explanations for why we read Kohelet, is we're about to enter the darkness of the winter. It's hard to imagine that on such a gorgeous October day. But we know it's getting dark earlier. It gets light later. We will change the clock. And that darkness and dreariness of November throughout the winter is going to come. A gift is that of knowing this fact is that we are godlike. We have a sense of time. We have a sense that things are futile and that things are fleeting, and we have to hold on to it. And it's also a gift because we know that our loved ones don't die with their bodies. We have their memories because we also have knowledge of the past. We experience what they have left behind for us. But I can't speak for animals. But how many animals do we know mourn for their parents when they're taken away or when they die? Not many, I suspect. But we've also been given a burden that life is fleeting, a gift of not forgetting. Today, let us embrace our knowledge of time and memory, to celebrate, to reconnect, and remember our loved ones, and use that as an opportunity to bring some joy into our life as opposed to anxiety and worry.